welcome to the Fantasy Football Affair live stream. It's Monday night, and when it's live, I'm digging it the most, baby. It is the Matty Daddy. I'm ready to grind this out, talk tight ends, some terrible trades, maybe a little sports movies. But I'm not here alone. When I started out on this journey, I had two guys I leaned on, taught me everything I know about podcasting, and I'm ready to pay it forward tonight and talk tight ends. Get them up, those flexes with the Flex Bros. That's right. Tom is here, and so is Sam, and we are ready to grind. Flex on them,
right.
baby. Yeah. Dude,
welcome
Matty,
to the thanks for having us. As usual, you give us too much credit. I don't know if we really taught you anything, but I appreciate the love and appreciate you having us on tonight.
Dude, like I said, you guys are consistent. You guys are grinders. If you haven't checked out Super Duper Flex Bros, they have their own website, their own podcast, and it is taken off, baby. So, Sam, kind of fill us in on when I met you, we were kind of talking tight ends. That's what this show's basically about. We had heard of reception perception, and you kind of put your blend of this to the tight end position.
Yeah, so what I did is you've heard of the reception perception before, and that's a really cool way to get to know wide receivers, both veterans and those young guys coming in. So what I wanted to do is put together kind of like a tight ends opportunity model so we can take a look at guys that are being drafted that might be able to produce for us. So we see in Dynasty, in the research that Tom and I have done, it takes about 3.2 seasons for a tight end to really fully break out and kind of find their role. There's just so many things that they take on. If you've listened to Greg Olsen or Travis Kelce talk recently, they just talk about all the things that they have to do. They have to learn to run the routes, read defenses, obviously. You see those really productive tight ends, they almost have the mind of a quarterback, so they see the same thing that their quarterback's in. I tried to put together a model that kind of shows what we can expect from those guys, not based just off athletic measurables, but also their college production. And then after a year or two, we can also plug in their NFL production. So it's kind of given us some fun numbers to play with. It's helped us identify some guys. Robert Tonyan, for example, he had really high NFL production before last season. So he was a guy I had on the back of a lot of my rosters. Got him basically for free. So we've got some guys like that. And then also it kind of helps us see which guys we should avoid. I know a lot of us like to see those big athletic monsters, but you think of like David Njoku, he hasn't necessarily produced yet, but if you see him with his shirt off, you're not going to mess with him.
Dude, Tom, are you ready to talk some tight ends, baby? We got 8 on the roster.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's get started. We'll talk charities a little later, but we got to give them those football yum-yums. So let's get started with one of those. Be forewarned, I'm not talking Pitts. I'm not talking Kelce. Kind of these guys we've talked about all offseason. I want to talk about that next tier that everybody's kind of like itching for, that next big tight end. Let's start at the top of the list. TJ Hockenson. Dude, Tom, fill me in on this guy. This is tight end 3 last year. You're going to golf this year. Is this a guy you see finishing in that top 5 tight end model?
Well, I think absolutely, whether or not it's in Dynasty or seasonal, I think Hockenson's floor is going to be tight end 5. I don't see him finishing outside of being one of the top 5 guys. With the lack of wide receivers available in Detroit, I feel like it's kind of a cold take these days. But I'm going all in. I traded for Hockenson before the end of last season, and if anybody's willing to trade him in Dynasty, I'm willing to give up multiple firsts to get him on my roster.
Oh, multiple first.
Yep. I have to apologize. I am currently at the firehouse, so I do have some radio traffic going on behind me. So hopefully that's not picking up too much on your end.
Nah, as Nelly said, it's getting hot in here. Let's keep it going. More Hawk talk. This is a guy who's going ADP tight end 5. So people are drafting Pitts ahead of him. Sam, is this a guy, let's just say in redraft, are you going Hawk first or are you going Pitts?
I'm going Hockenson this season for sure. So we talked about his number 5 finish last season. So last year he was only averaging 6 targets per game. So for context, last season we saw Kelce and Waller averaging 9, so about 50% more. And then even Kittle was averaging 8. And on top of that, TJ Hockenson, he's one of the few tight ends in about the last decade to finish with 6 or less touchdowns and still be a top 5 tight end. So when Tom says tight end 5 is his floor, I totally agree, because chances are he's probably going to walk into a couple more touchdowns, probably finish with 7 or 8. And then he's going to be getting those Cooper Kupp type targets from Goff. And you think about the loss of Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones in that offense, they're really going to be running it all through TJ Hockenson. So what I compared TJ Hawkinson's upcoming season to, in an article on superduperflexbros.com, I was saying, think back to George Kittle's, I think his second season, when he was the only guy in town for the 49ers and they just kept rotating quarterbacks, but it didn't matter. Kittle was the guy that funneled that offense through. So I think just picture that same thing with TJ Hockenson this season. So yeah, I'll go Hawk over Pitts in redraft this year for sure.
All right, Dynasty, rapid fire. Hawk, Pitts, is it close? Let's go Tom first. How close is this?
I think it's super close in Dynasty. They'll both probably be top 3, top 4. Actually, I think if you look at most sites, I think Hockenson is 3 and Pitts is 4. So you can flip flop them. They're both going to get the targets, and I think after this season, Kyle Pitts will be the tight end 1 in Dynasty, just with how young he is and that breakaway speed, where he's going to be taking some 70-yard catches to the house.
Whoa. You can tell Tom's in the firehouse because it's getting hot, baby. Pitts, Hawk, how close is this for you, Sam?
It's close, but I'm going to go Pitts only because this doesn't get talked about too much because Julio was traded after the NFL draft, but the Falcons went Pitts over Chase in their draft. So Pitts went before Chase. They knew they were going to be shipping away Julio, so that shows you what they think. So I think the Lions, unfortunately, they're in rebuild mode, where the Falcons, they still think they're competitive and they've got a little bit more of a blueprint. I think the Lions, they're just tearing it all down. So we hope for TJ Hawkinson's sake that he still gets to produce really consistently in that. But with Pitts, they've got a long-term plan.
I can dig it. I'm one of those. I don't know what to do with Hawk because I do have Pitts way higher, and I think it's the stink of the Jared Goff, and that's my biggest worry. And just maybe injuries, maybe double teams. I don't know, but I'm not as high on Hawk. I definitely think he is that safe tight end 1 no matter what. He's going to finish in that first, second tier, but I don't know. We got another interesting one on us. Let's talk this guy, not Gronk, Mark Andrews. Consistently tight end 4, tight end 3, and everybody is crapping on this guy. Granted, tight end 3 to tight end 4 wasn't that close. But Mark Andrews, man, is he a buy right now in Dynasty? Let's go you, Tom. Hit me with it.
I think Mark Andrews is easily a buy, and I've seen him getting moved around almost as a throw-in in some leagues. And if you go back to his 2019 season, he was the safety blanket for Lamar Jackson, and all people could talk about was that Lamar Jackson was going to be regressing in 2020, which that did end up happening. And some of that regression with the touchdown numbers coming down, of course, was going to affect his number 1 receiver in Mark Andrews. Anybody who's listened to the Super Duper Flex Bros podcast knows we're super high on Rashad Bateman, our Minnesota boy, getting drafted in the first round by the Ravens. But I think Mark Andrews is the new version of Jason Witten, where he's going to be a top 10 tight end for the next decade. He's not going to be breaking those tackles like George Kittle and scoring multiple touchdowns every week. But I think he's a very safe tight end 1. And if you can get him in Dynasty, absolutely go out and get him.
We got Nick Gonzalez. Hawk can be like Cooper Kupp for Goff. Nick, thanks for watching the show. Absolutely. We can definitely – somebody's going to have to catch balls in Detroit. So it's an interesting year for the Detroit Lions in general. All right, Mark Andrews. You just heard your brother hype this guy up, say he is a buy. Does it worry you that they bring in all these tight ends every year? And you're going to have those up and down games. Is that going to be an issue for you, Sam, in redraft? Is this a guy you're targeting once those first couple come off the board? Or are you going to wait and just take a dart throw at one of these other guys?
No, I'm definitely taking Andrews. And shout out to Nick in the chat, our Texans insider. But I'll pose a question back to you, Matt. You've been playing fantasy for a while. If you could go back in time and get Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham, or George Kittle before their full breakout, would you make that move?
Absolutely. Of course we would. Yeah.
So only 4 tight ends have put together over 2,100 yards in their first 3 seasons. So those 3 guys, Gronk, Graham, and Kittle, and then the 4th guy is Mark Andrews. So he's absolutely somebody that we should be looking at. The addition of Bateman, that's just going to help open things up. Mark Andrews has basically been the one since he's been there. So I love Andrews. Give me all the Andrews in Dynasty and in redraft.
Absolutely. This is a guy whose values kind of stayed the same. Everybody's a little low on him. I see him up in more trades than usual. But if it's that tier right before the cusp of an explosion, I mean, I'd like another round with Gronk or Kittle or these other guys. So maybe Andrews is going to make another step up, and we're just kind of selling him low right now. Mr. Burkholder, yo, what's up, Eric? Eric is our Fantasy Football Affair podcast host. Every week, weekly pod, Dynasty, you name it, he has it on lock. He also does a lot on the website. Shout out to Mr. Burkholder. Let's keep the good time. You know Berkey? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. He played in one of our first guillotine leagues, too. Shout out to him. I think he made it pretty far. I don't know if he had experience or not, but he did a good job faking it if he didn't.
he knows this stuff, man. Very student of the game for sure. There he is. He was so close. He gets it. Yeah. Let's talk Goedert. Thoughts on Goedert? We haven't seen Ertz move. This is a guy who just tight end 23 last year, getting drafted as a tight end 7 this year. So you got other guys going before him. Is the Goedert breakout upon us, or is this a guy that just might never reach his potential? Let's go to you, Tom.
This is a guy that I have on a handful of my dynasty leagues, and I'm not going to trade him because I think he's easily the number one option in the passing game right now. I think there's been multiple podcasts out there that have been calling for the breakout. And I think it was year 3 when Zach Ertz actually officially broke out and then kind of became that tight end 3 for multiple seasons, which is what I see Dallas Goedert, his upside being. So we talked about Mark Andrews previously, and I see Dallas Goedert as a more explosive version of Mark Andrews, being a little bit quicker and maybe can break a tackle or two to find himself in the end zone.
Do you see Goedert maybe making a step this year because Hurts isn't the most accurate quarterback? That's a knock on him. We haven't seen much with these receivers. If Zach Ertz gets moved out of town, could this be a guy just that's a target monster in that Philly offense?
Yeah, and I don't even think he necessarily needs a lot of targets to be a top 10 tight end. I think he was tight end 9 or tight end 10 his rookie season, where he wasn't even he was maybe the 3rd or 4th option on that team behind Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz. So the sky's the limit for Dallas Goedert. I think with his age, that he's 26, maybe 27 this season, I don't think there's a chance for him to surpass Hockenson or Pitts in Dynasty. But I think that tight end 1 ceiling is definitely in the cards for him.
I remember a couple years back when he was getting drafted, I thought my Cowboys were going to take him. Philly moved up, scooped him. Sam, is this a tight end of the future? Is this going to be one of those tier 1 tight ends because how old is he? Like 26? Is that what you said? This is a young blood. Is this another tight end that's going to be towards the top for the future?
Yeah, you definitely want a piece of Goedert. I can't get around calling him Goedert. I feel goofy. So we're going to go with Goedert on this. But Tom said he doesn't need those targets to be effective. But whether or not he wants those targets, he's going to be getting them. So we talked about Waller and Kelsey both getting about 9 targets per game last season. We've never seen Goedert get more than 6 targets per game on average in a season, and this is going to be the season that happens. So we know Ertz isn't going to be in a green uniform, or maybe he'll go to the Jets, but he's not going to be wearing that Philly jersey anymore. But I think we can expect Goedert to get closer to 8 to 9 targets a game, similar to George Kittle. And with that, he still has the opportunity to be the number 1 target on that offense. So J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was obviously a bust. Devonta Smith, whether you love him or hate him, whether it's the size or not, he's still unproven. And then their guy last year, blanking on his name, but he hasn't hit yet either. So
Rager.
Yeah, Rager. I know, and I wanted to forget his name because I took him over Justin Jefferson all over the place. But yeah, so I think we're going to see him get those targets, similar to Hockenson getting that bump in targets in Detroit too. So he's going to be a really safe tight end this season, both in dynasty and in redraft.
Rapid fire. We going Andrews or Goedert?
Andrews.
Goedert.
Ooh. I'll go Andrews. I feel a little more confident. I'm just not a Goedert fan.
He's been finishing higher too. It's a safer pick.
I remember a couple years ago, Philly had the show that was on like Amazon, where like kind of like a Hard Knocks thing, and I saw how immature Goedert was. Granted, he's like 23. Everybody's immature, and you see how Zach Ertz comes to work every day, just a different kind of style of player. So obviously, for some reason, that's scarred me in the fantasy realm. Let's keep it going. A tight end won just 2 years ago, Higbee. New sheriff in town in Stafford. This is a guy who's getting drafted at tight end 16 over average draft position. Tight end 8 just 2 years ago. Tom, is this a tight end you're targeting if you wait and miss on those first 5 or 6?
I've been out on Higbee for a while, and if I had him on any of my dynasty rosters, I don't know what other people are looking to get for him, but I don't think I'd be looking for much more than a late second or early third. I think with the amount of receivers that the Rams have and adding Tutu Atwell, not that Atwell's going to be getting multiple targets every single game, but I just don't see Tyler Higbee being a big player for the Rams anymore. And I think that season was just kind of an outlier.
Tom, you're breaking a bunch of people's hearts right now.
I'm sorry.
Higbee, dynasty asset, Sam, or is this a guy you're saying no way, Jose?
Man, Tom and I, we're brothers, so we're gonna agree on a lot of this. But yeah, Higbee, if you can flip him for a second, go out and do it. So going into this season, we're seeing a lot of change of the guard with a lot of the quarterbacks. So one of my rule of thumbs now on these tight ends is something a lot of us have probably noticed, but average quarterbacks, they're probably going to target their tight ends at an above average rate. So if you look at a guy like Higbee, he's got Stafford throwing him the ball now. So he no longer has an average quarterback. And these are some of the best weapons that Stafford's ever going to play with. So he's not going to be looking for those easy 5-yard out plays to the tight end. If he's going to do those types of plays, it's going to be going to Kupp, or it's going to be going to Woods, or it's going to be going to one of my favorite sleeper wide receivers. We'll talk about later on that I paid for last season. But yeah, the fact that he no longer has an average quarterback, that really hurts Higbee, and he's not a guy I'm interested in at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I'm not holding on to Higbee anywhere I got him. I'm selling him off the Stafford hype. I just, like you said, that sneaky receiver and a couple others, I'll take those all day with Cam Akers, and I'm never giving up on my boy Darrell Henderson. So this is
Do me both.
This is a sell. It's hard to fall in love with those Memphis running backs. They just all look so sexy in college, and then they come to the pros to break your heart. Let's keep going, man. Let's talk about that other former Ram. South Alabama's finest, Gerald Everett in a Seahawks uniform. Yeah, they got Disley, but Disley can barely walk half the games. Is this Russ's new ingredient to cook with, Tom, or is this a guy that not buying the hype?
All right, so this is a guy that I actually did a little bit of homework on before the show. But I've got a question for you. How many years do we need to get burned on this Gerald Everett hype? He's going into year 5. His best finish was tight end 22 in 2018.
Okay.
And if you're comparing apples to oranges, I would say that tight end 22 is the equivalent of probably wide receiver 50. And that was 2 years ago. In the second half of the season, Russell Wilson was completing 21.1 passes per game. So if DK and Tyler Lockett are accounting for around half of those receptions, and like you said, Will Disley is still there splitting time with Everett, how high can Everett's ceiling really be? So just much like our boy or your boy Tyler Higbee, if I had any shares of Everett, I'd be selling him for a third round, and actually one of the leagues that Sam invited
Moving
me
on.
to. I inherited an orphan team that had Everett, and I was able to flip him for Antonio Brown and who's the receiver that the Raiders took in the third.
Ruggs?
Edwards.
And Brian Edwards.
Oh, my
So
God.
I'll take an upside receiver over this quote unquote upside tight end. So I'm out.
Tom going in there rough, getting steals. That's definitely not a terrible trade. What's for somebody else?
And he came to me.
Oh, that's the worst. They're desperate. Dude, Everett's getting drafted as tight end 24, though. So ADP, is this a guy that you could see, just hypothetical, Sam, is it just nothing here? Like you said, it's a new quarterback, but it is Russ Wilson.
There's nothing there. Average quarterbacks are going to target their tight ends at an above average rate. The quarterback at Seattle, who's that? I think that's Mr. Unlimited. He's definitely playing at an above average rate. So he's not going to be looking for his tight end. He's going to be looking to try to keep up with all the other stud quarterbacks out there. So Gerald Everett, you gotta move him while you still can if there's still hype.
So
well, that's why
if Russell Wilson is Mr. Unlimited and Gerald Everett is a tight end playing for a really good quarterback, does that make Everett Mr. Limited?
Oh,
I think it does.
I think we're on to something.
But that's why we have these conversations, guys. We're talking tight ends. Everybody wants to talk pits. They want to talk these studs, but everybody has upside in fantasy football. Some of them fifth year, fourth year, whatnot. But if you put the situation different, people get excited about a Higbee because Stafford's there. They get excited about Everett because of, Mr. Unlimited. So it's good to have these conversations. I'm right there with you. I don't know. Yeah, maybe if he's on waivers, but I'm not trading anything for this guy. If you're offering me something, please. So I like what we're going with Everett. I'm kind of right there with you. Let's talk about some other guys at the bottom of the barrel. This is a guy that kind of, when you go to Minnesota, you talk, is that Canada or Minnesota too?
Minnesota. That sounded like Schwarzenegger.
Hey, always like Schwarzenegger. Irv Smith, dude. I looked this guy up, 22 years old. Did he start playing in the NFL when he was a baby? This is crazy. This is a guy who showed flashes last year, getting drafted or getting average draft position. People are starting to get in on this guy. Tight end 14 currently.
Well,
Irv Smith season.
Nobody's closer to Irv Smith than Sam. So I'll let you start out with this one, Sam.
Sam, fill us in. What do you mean when you say close? What do we got?
Little known fact: Irv Smith actually lives on the same street as me. So I see him in the neighborhood. He's taking some pictures with one of my buddies, and yeah, he's a super friendly guy. But
go get him. Let's go.
Yeah, after that Seahawks game last year, my wife was at Target and she saw him walking out, and he was walking with a little bit of a limp. I think he took a few hits that game. But yeah, he's a very cool, down to earth guy, like you said. 22 years old. But a lot of people were concerned in Dynasty because Zimmer came out and said his role won't change. And I talked about this on a recent podcast, but between weeks 14 through 16, so that those games where you're fighting for that championship, this was his role. Each game he was averaging about 6 targets, 5 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. So if his role isn't going to change, I'm okay with that. If you extrapolate that out, he's going to be just under 1,000 yards, close to double-digit touchdowns, and he's going to have a handful of receptions, which a lot of us appreciate in these new tight end premium type formats. So if you got a contending roster, you're probably going to have a late first-round pick. I'd be willing to pay a late first-round pick for Irv Smith. Like you said, he's 22, so we have not seen his ceiling yet.
Man, that's steep, bro. I like it, though. That's a polar opposite of Higbee and Everett. I was just about to ask you draft capital for this guy. Tom, are you in that same boat? Are you willing to pitch a first, or is this a guy maybe you're going to go in a little lower, maybe a second, a third? What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that if I'm rebuilding, that's I definitely want to get as much Irv Smith as I can get. And if somebody's wanting a first, if it looks like it's going to be a late first, I will absolutely trade that. I think last year, Dillon finishing as wide receiver 10 will probably be the last time. And that really hurts to say. We're huge Dillon fans. Great guy, great story. But I think he's going to slip more into that wide receiver 2 position. And we will see Irv Smith continue to get 5 or 6 targets per game.
And the Vikings don't have a good defense. So the cure for a bad defense is a good offense. So I expect them to have to pass the ball quite a bit. I don't know if I would pitch a first for Irv, but I like where you guys are going. This could be the next big breakout that, like we said, tight end 14. This could be a guy that snaked. Do you guys feel like this is a year for the tight end 1, Irv Smith, or are you going to have to be patient, maybe give it a little more time? Because like you said, Dillon is a little old. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, that metric we came up with our recent research in the last decade, it's 3.2 seasons, so he's going into his 3rd season. So you might still have to be patient. You might get more of those high-end tight end 2 numbers this season, but give him another year to get a little bit more familiar with the defenses and really sync up with his quarterback, whether that's Kellen Mond or if that still is Kirk Cousins. But yeah, definitely don't hesitate to take him even if you got to wait a little bit longer.
Irv Smith season. P nasty. Irv Smith, baby. Late rounder. Let's get it. I like it. We got 2 more on the list, guys. This is a guy I think y'all like. I love him. I love what we've seen. Jonnu Smith. This guy's in New England. Granted, Hunter Henry's there. But we saw this guy when he had the ball in his hands last year. He was a monster. Tight end 11 on the year. New role, Cam Newton, New England, Mac Jones. What are your thoughts here, Tom?
I love Jonnu's opportunity. We're always looking for talent and opportunity in fantasy football. And I'll never forget his first reception last year in week 1 against the Denver Broncos. I thought it was AJ Brown, where he got tackled and it was like, there's an 8 on that jersey. And it was Jonnu Smith. And he continued to tear it up until it seemed like he got hampered by that injury after about the first month. But I think it's as simple as just follow the money. Jonnu's getting paid to be a tight end 1. We've seen tight ends have success in New England before, so I expect him to get plenty of targets. And tight end 12 is probably the lowest that we'll see Jonnu Smith finish this season.
Sam, are you on the same bandwagon as me and Tom? Do you see this guy as a tight end 1?
I got to just disagree with you guys and draw the line somewhere. So what I love about Jonnu Smith is the attention he's going to draw from the defense for the real tight end 1 on that team, Hunter Henry. So Hunter Henry is just all around a better pass catcher. Jonnu's a monster. I have no doubt he's going to get probably a career high in both targets and carries. So I'm excited to see what he does. But the fact that they'll be able to operate near the goal line with Cam Newton, they're going to have to respect Cam possibly running the ball and then all the creative stuff that they do with Jonnu. So it's pretty much always going to leave Hunter Henry one-on-one. And we've seen him destroy linebackers on one-on-one coverage whenever he's been healthy. So I love what Jonnu does for Hunter Henry. But if I have to pick between him and Henry, it's easily Henry that's, in my opinion, going to get more targets and be more productive.
Okay. I see that touchdown upside. I see this guy can do it all. So I'm one of those. I could see him sneaking into that tight end 7 or 8. I'm hype on this guy, man. Between just a red zone monster with Cam Newton. This is that missing. I know it's kind of a lame term, but this is the Greg Olsen for the Cam Newton. So I'll take Jonnu everywhere I can get, and I hope and I pray that I'm right on this one. But I feel it, man. Sam, I think you might be wrong on this. I'm with Team Tom over there.
Well, Jonnu can be Greg Olsen, and then Hunter Henry can be Steve Smith. So we can agree on that.
I like it. Guys, we got one more on the list. I just did a Titan team preview. I was criminally shocked how low this guy was going. The Ferksker, man, tight end 25. That's where he's getting drafted. Tight end 30 last year. This is a guy who plays in the slot, kind of does it all. He's just got the ringing endorsement from Delaney Walker, and we've seen the play action king that is Ryan Tannehill. Sam, is this a tight end that you might be buying at his cost?
So I'll stick with that same theme. Average quarterbacks are going to target their tight ends at an above average rate. if we look at Tannehill, he's been anything but average since being the starter, and all they did was add Julio Jones. So he's not going to be peppering Firkser with targets. So I think Firkser probably had like 2 or 3 startable moments last season. So in a pinch, you can definitely throw him in as the starter, but don't look for any consistency out of a team that's going to run that play action with A.J. Brown and Julio. And when they get a big, it's going to be feeding Henry those 30 carries every game.
You guys like him over Higbee and Everett?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's an opportunity for him there more than Higbee, and yeah, Everett is probably the lowest between those 3 for me.
I'd say yes. I'm with you on this one, Matty Daddy. I love Anthony Firkser. I think he's going to be this year's Logan Thomas. Where during the offseason last year, Logan Thomas was getting a lot of hype, and then people started to cool on him. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with Firkser right now, where people were super high on him, and then the coach said that they were going to bring in competition. Well, they didn't. They didn't draft anybody. They haven't signed anybody. They haven't traded for anybody. It's been a really small sample size with him being the tight end 1 for the Titans. But I think you remember the same game that I remember in week 6 against the Texans when he had 9 targets for 8 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. And this guy has that breakaway speed. I'm still offering a second for him. If I need help in the tight end department, if I'm looking for a cheap tight end with upside, one of my leagues had waivers closed until after the rookie draft, and Firkser happened to be out there, and 6 of the 12 teams put a bid in for him. So I spent 36 of my 100 fab dollars on him already. Somebody else put in 30. So I know people out there want him.
I think you see A.J. Brown still handling a knee injury in the offseason. You're still hearing about it. Julio played, I think, 9 games last year. These are guys that aren't your just model health. So to me, yeah, Firkser and he can play the slot. Give me this guy all day, especially at that tight end 25 range. I want this. This is yums. Dude, you know what's not yums? Our terrible trades we've done in the past. For every one we've gotten right on the Mark Andrews, the different players, we've gotten some wrong. So I think there's no way to start this. We were talking a little Rams football earlier. Let's talk fails because we've all had them. Let's go to you, Sam. Feed us in on this terrible trade. I'm putting it on the screen. You take it away, brother.
All right. My worst trade. I've done a couple of bad ones in this league, but I've had a couple, and to protect myself, I will say I did win this one last season, this league. However, I did not win this trade. So I traded away Jalen Hurts and a 4th for Van Jefferson. So, of course, this was before the season even started. So my learning moment from that is there's no such thing as too many good things in a dynasty startup. So it was a startup last season. I took Josh Allen, Ryan Tannehill, Justin Herbert, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Marcus Mariota, and Jalen Hurts as my QB6. But I only drafted 3 total wide receivers, and we had to start 3, so that meant I had no depth. So I got excited hopping on YouTube and looking at those Van Jefferson highlights, and I pulled the trigger on that. So my trade partner, I play with him in a few leagues. We were going to do Jefferson for Hurts straight up, and he asked me to add that 4th, and I caved. So I lost that one.
This happens to everybody. We're all still kind of on Jefferson. Fill us in on Jefferson. Anything you want to kind of shout out to this guy? Because you've been on him forever.
Yeah, I think he's just an injury away, and it's not a hot take at all. But I am a little concerned with Kupp's knees. They get talked about a lot off season, similar to what you were just saying with A.J. Brown. But he's so talented, so that's why we haven't seen any reconstruction of his salary or anything like that. But I think if there's one more Kupp injury, we did see Van Jefferson be really productive in that playoff game against the Packers. So there's still a lot of life for him. And he's somebody, hey, if what we're hearing is right, and next year's rookie class isn't very strong, if you want to trade away next year's second-round pick for Van Jefferson, you could probably do a lot worse than that.
Now, granted, this trade was in June of 2020. So this was a trade before we knew Wentz was just going to, shit the bed, everything that happened. So I do get where you're coming from. Obviously, it didn't blossom into the rose you thought it was going to be. P. Nasty says this was a collusion loss. Yeah, nowadays we would all quit. But a year and a half ago, not the same thing. Let's keep it going, dude, because the bad trades are just rolling in. Tom, walk me through this nightmare.
Yeah, this one really hurts after doing a couple of dynasty startups now. So I had Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins. Who were we just talking about for the Titans?
Firster?
They're I'm thinking on the quarterback.
Tannehill
And Dak. So I didn't realize I was sitting on a gold mine with Dak Prescott there. So I did end up trading away Dak and Dillon, thinking I was getting rid of a wide receiver that was going to be on the outside looking in, possibly finishing 2020 as around wide receiver 30. Instead, he ended up finishing 2020 as wide receiver 10. Courtland Sutton, of course, the injury doesn't play at all last year, but the way that Sutton was able to kind of high point the ball and playing with terrible quarterbacks, I saw him kind of becoming the next Julio Jones in this league. And I still think Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver 1. I've had some people sniffing around my rosters trying to get him for a second or a late first, but I'm still holding on to Sutton and holding on to hope that he's going to be that top 10 wide receiver in Dynasty someday. And of course, playing with Sam, we know these tight ends matter. So when you have a guy like Kyle Rudolph that doesn't do anything for your team, then you can kind of justify it. But after seeing CeeDee Lamb fall to the Cowboys in last year's draft, that just kind of added some gasoline to the fire, and it made me feel even worse now that Dak Prescott, a guy that I was getting in round 4 of super flex startups, and now he's a top 6 pick in these startup drafts. I definitely lost that one.
You definitely did. But like you said, you got 2 young pieces that should be in the league for quite a while. It's not like you traded for an RB. You traded for a young tight end, young receiver. So the rose isn't completely off the pedal. But it definitely, Dak does hurt.
I would say one of the learning lessons from this trade as well is you see these receivers creeping up into their late 20s or early 30s, and you feel like you need to sell. Where I think at this point, you're probably not getting what you want for Thielen. So if you can't get a first for a player like Thielen, he's probably better off just staying on your roster as your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 or flex piece.
And if anybody plays Dynasty, you don't trade veteran receivers in the offseason. You wait till week 1 or 2 when they have a good game and a competitive team comes calling. So I see this. I'm one of those. I've been offered Thielen everywhere for a second. And I'm like, I want to take it. It's hard. It's one of those. It's tough. Speaking of tough, you just said old receivers. You know what I thought I was getting? The bell of the ball in A.J. Dillon. Those hips, they don't lie. Mike Evans. Oh, he's Mike Evans, but he's still a wide receiver 1 too. The offseason bug. The A.J. Dillon hype got me, and I busted and falled flat. Right before the free agency, I was like, there's no way that Aaron Jones is going to stay in Green Bay. And what happened? Aaron Jones stayed in Green Bay. So hindsight 2020, I got murked on this trade. And A.J. Dillon's on my roster forever because I will never, ever let him go. But will he ever be an RB1? It's tough to say. Is this one got to sting the worst? I mean, Dak is pretty bad because you lose quite a bit. But I might have a dynasty piece that never is even startable. Thoughts on this one, Sam?
Yeah, I see where your head was at in this. So we saw A.J. Dillon be really productive, and it makes me think of Alvin Kamara's rookie season before he really found the field after like week 3 or 4. A lot of people said he wasn't going to be able to make an impact because he was behind Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram. But then slowly he worked himself onto the field, and then he was really productive. So their play styles probably about as different as possible. A.J. Dillon seems like he's a thumper, where Kamara is really elusive. But if things had panned out the right way, if both Jamal Williams disappeared and Aaron Jones didn't get that deal, and then A.J. Dillon's getting the handoffs from Aaron Rodgers, and we get to see him have that Eddie Lacy role, I think that could have been really, really good. So depending on your team's depth, yeah, now it looks bad, but that could have been a league-winning move for you. But sometimes you gotta shoot those shots, but they can definitely miss the target by a lot, depending on how free agency shakes up.
Tom, did I just give away charity with my buy-in this year by doing this trade?
I would definitely agree that you lost this one. It's like you so nicely pointed out, it's not as bad as my Dak trade, but I think we've all seen in Dynasty, if you want a young running back, whether he's a top 10 or top 20 or even top 30 like A.J. Dillon, you have to give up some kind of a significant piece. In another league, Sam and I saw somebody trade away Michael Thomas for who's the running back for the Bucs now.
O.J. Simpson,
Ronald Jones, and a second. So we saw Michael Thomas, the wide receiver 1 2 years ago, get and clearly that's a bad trade. But nobody is giving away a Cam Akers or Saquon Barkley, or it's near impossible to get these young running backs. So this is a trade that it does look bad right now, but in 2 years, if A.J. Dillon is still considered a top 20 or top 25 running back, and Mike Evans is finishing outside wide receiver 30, then this one could still pan out. I do have to say Mike Evans is one of those older receivers that even Sam and I have done trades with each other where Mike Evans is involved. But just looking at his finishes, last year he finished as wide receiver 11, 2019 wide receiver 15, 2018 wide receiver 9, 2017 wide receiver 17, and 2016 wide receiver 2. So this is a guy that you can probably trade a top 6 or top 10 rookie pick if your rookie drafts for some reason haven't started, and that's absolutely a steal. But he's just not valued where he should be in Dynasty.
Yes, we talk trades, we talk tight ends. Let's get some rapid fire, and let's pep you guys up a little before you leave. Everybody loves sports movies. Let's see some rapid fire, and let's see if you guys are on the same page or a little different. Longest yard, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Burt Reynolds, the OGs. But then you got that cheering in the back. Rudy, Rudy, Rudy. Sam, is it Rudy, or does longest yard have a chance?
Do I have to answer if I haven't watched either of these?
Oh, you haven't watched Rudy?
I have not.
I'm coming to Minnesota. Hold up.
All right. Take it booked.
No Rudy. Wow, you're disqualified. Let me. Tom,
I'm going with the longest yard. One of the most underrated actors in all of Hollywood is my boy Terry Crews, who plays Cheeseburger Eddie. The convict sneaking in those cheeseburgers. You don't know which hole he's sneaking those burgers in, but if you need to get hooked up with the quarter pounder, he's your guy.
Got the fries that'll cross your eyes and the shakes that'll make you quake. Look at the hate coming.
Yeah, you know it.
Nasty. Oh man, let's get Sam back on here. We're gonna give him one more shot. I'm going Rudy here. Long movie, but the ultimate underdog story. It's hard not to love this. We got one more. Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington, or Draft Day with Kevin Costner? Sam, Redemption. Have you seen one of these movies before you answer?
I've seen both of these movies, and we're playing Dynasty. If you haven't seen Draft Day yet, it's a very entertaining movie. You get to see how one pick can be traded for multiple picks, then all of a sudden the value of that changes based on the time of the draft. So I'm gonna go draft day on that. I know. Remember the Titans is a classic.
P Nasty just
give me draft day.
Level. Tom,
I love you, P Nasty.
Tom, is this draft day all day, or is there a little remember the Titans in you?
Well, since I had a hard time remembering Ryan Tannehill's name, I got to remember the Titans and go with Tannehill and then remember the Titans here.
See it. See, you guys aren't the same. I love it. I'm a draft day guy. I think I'm more of just a Kevin Costner mark. So anytime I can watch Costner, it doesn't matter if it's Dances with Wolves or Robin Hood.
He was Superman's dad. He was Superman's stepdad.
That's right. Golly. Yep. Dude, what a hell of a show we had today. Before we get out of here, like we've all said, Super Duper Flex Bros. I almost wore my hoodie, but I knew I would die of like suffocation for how hot it is. Tried to hang it in the background and my signs fell on the floor. But I want to thank you for the swag, man. Like I said, I wouldn't be doing my show and doing my passion without you guys listening to y'all's podcast. Y'all drop every week and just seeing your passion for not only podcasting, but we got Scott Fishbowl going. We got all these different charities that we all try to give as much as we can, but that's what y'all do this for. So I want you to kind of get the spotlight on just your passion and how this kind of got evolved, and kind of run us real quick on Super Duper Flex Bros and just the charity work y'all do.
Well, yeah, and before I hop into that, I do want to say, Matty Daddy, thank you for having us, because the student has definitely become the teacher. You have surpassed us immensely with your editing ability and your shows. So it's great to be on the show with you here.
Teamwork makes the dream work, man. Like I said, we're all one and one for all. That's a musketeer. That's not a Robin Hood, but you get it. Cosmic.
Right.
Go ahead,
guys. Talking about the charities. So Sam and I put the Super Duper Flex Bros podcast and all of our leagues together to raise money for charities. Our goal was to raise $2,000 last year, and we raised exactly $2,020. So we raised $2,020 in 2020. I think during COVID, we saw how many people out there that could actually use the money. I was fortunate enough to be in a job that I was still going to work. I was still collecting a paycheck, and we see people and families that were struggling. Sam and I have both had family and friends that have had to go through cancer, unfortunately. So a lot of the leagues that we raise money for go to cancer. And as a full-time firefighter, my department, much like many departments throughout the country, does something called Fill the Boot, where we actually stand out on street corners with an empty boot and people put money in it, and we raise money for MDA, for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So this money goes to kids that have muscular dystrophy, and they can go to summer camp and have fun. And they set up zip lines for kids that are in wheelchairs, and they get to do all kinds of fun things that they normally wouldn't get to do. So as a Super Duper Flex Bro, we always challenge people that if your league doesn't give any money to charity, talk to your commissioner, get those get the wheels spinning, even if it's just 5 or 10%. Just get something going. So I've convinced almost all of my leagues to donate. So I run multiple leagues for fire departments, and half the dues go to charity. So whether it's a $20 or $50 league, it's most of it's going to MDA. We've got about a dozen different charities we've been raising money for, and our goal for this year is to raise $4,000. We're currently at $2,520. So we're gonna get there. So yeah, I feel like I've covered most of it. Sam, you got anything else you want to add on top of that?
No, I'd just say even your existing leagues, you can create a new league too. And the really cool thing about the Sleeper app that we love now is you can do those season-long best ball leagues. So you can just do the draft like everybody loves and then just forget it. So Tom and I were talking about how we're pretty old school, and we thought best ball was dumb and we'd never do it. But once you're managing over 12 leagues and someone says, hey, I want to do best ball, and you get the idea of just drafting and then not dealing with any commissioner duties, setting waivers, anything like that, it sounds pretty good. So even if your existing league isn't interested in making any changes, because it's hard to get 12, 14, 16 guys all on the same page, especially where that money might go ahead and create a best ball league with $10 buy-in or $20 buy-in. We just did a Scott Fishbowl copycat league for $20, and then $100 went to Toys for Tots, and then first place gets an authentic Travis Kelce jersey because tight ends matter. So you can get creative and just put together a fun $10 or $20 league with your friends, or kind of expand your reach and just share it out on Twitter or something. And you'd be surprised how quickly it'll fill up, especially on a Friday afternoon.
Yep, I see Pete Nasty in the chat there is going to talk to his commissioner. Join the Flex Bro community. Get your leagues to start donating to charities. It's a great cause. So if the guy who wins your league is somebody that you're not a fan of, at least you know not the whole thing is going to that individual, and it's
Absolutely.
going to a good cause.
By the end of the season, we don't want to talk to the champ, and then you hear about it for the rest of the year. So it's one of those, dude. The Bash Bros, Super Duper Flex Bros. Every week, you can check out their podcast anywhere podcasts drop. SuperDuperFlexBros.com. Hashtag tight ends matter, because they do, ladies and gentlemen. We just filled you up on your tight end fill. This is everything we've wanted and more from the Super Duper Flex Bros. Tom and Sam, it has been a pleasure. My treasure.